We've all encountered arguments against eating meat, yet in the EU and US, a mere 1% to 6% of people abstain from it. Meat is simply too delicious, easy to get, and part of our culture for most to give up. Plus, food preferences are personal, and nobody appreciates being lectured. Yet, we also adore animals. The majority own pets and champion animal rights. Few things online spark more outrage than animal cruelty. Both realities exist together. We enjoy meat and we cherish animals. Sadly, most animals we consume endure truly awful existences. It's not that we intentionally inflict suffering, but doing so makes meat remarkably affordable. If we collectively spent slightly more, we could greatly diminish animal distress, often by mere pennies per meal. Important note, farming involves many factors. Numerous farmers genuinely strive to offer their animals the best possible lives, but they're caught within a difficult system with intense market demands to maintain minimal pricing. Standards differ across countries, farms vary, and reliable information is often lacking. We've strived to combine details from diverse locations alongside the final costs you incur. For clarity, we'll categorize farming methods into 3 general types: decent, prisons, and torture camps. This division is somewhat crude. You've likely seen many more distinctions in stores, such as organic or grass-fed. We'll address those shortly. So, fellow meat-eaters, what would it take to prevent animal torture and still enjoy our fried chicken? Chickens. At any moment, roughly 26 billion chickens are alive on Earth, matching the population of all other bird species combined. While chickens may appear unintelligent, they're sociable, capable of communication, problem-solving, and empathy. Yet, most endure horrific cruelty. Let's begin with eggs. Globally, around 90% of laying hens reside in torture facilities, confined to extremely small cages, restricting movement. They're unable to express natural behaviors like nesting, roosting, foraging, or ground pecking, leading to intense frustration and self-harm. To prevent this, many farms trim their beaks. Recent legal bans and consumer efforts in the US and Europe have improved conditions, but over half of hens still live in cages. Astonishingly, this barely saves money. Imagine a dozen eggs costing around $3.60, 30 cents each. What's the cost to liberate these hens? The primary alternative is barn systems. Hens remain indoors but gain double the space and freedom to roam. Barns represent prisons, not ideal but significantly better. In the EU, barns raise consumer prices by about 2 cents per egg. A somewhat respectable alternative is free range, granting hens outdoor access, often with proper vegetation. In the EU, this adds roughly 7 cents per egg. Besides housing, chick culling is among the cruelest practices. Male chicks, unable to lay eggs, are killed post-birth, typically by gassing or grinding. This is widespread, affecting caged, barn, and even organic eggs. Annually, 7 billion chicks are culled this way. France and Germany have prohibited this. Breeding eggs are scanned early, hatching only female birds, potentially increasing costs by just 2 to 5 cents per egg. Thus, an additional 85 cents for a dozen eggs can shift hens from severe torture to reasonably decent lives. Another 60 cents could eliminate chick culling as well. Chicken meat presents a different scenario. Today's meat chickens are genetic anomalies, bred for rapid, excessive growth. Their internal organs suffer immense strain, and their weight often impairs their ability to walk, causing considerable ongoing pain. Precise figures are difficult to obtain, but switching to slower-growing breeds that suffer significantly less could raise the cost of a $1.50 chicken breast by 9 cents in the US. 90% of EU meat chickens live in prison or torture-like conditions, confined indoors in extreme overcrowding, sometimes with numerous birds per square meter, often in darkness and poor ventilation. What if they were moved to prisons? One EU study suggests providing 30% more space, perches, fresh air, and daylight would increase prices by another 13 cents per serving. Less than 5% of meat chickens likely live free range in fairly good environments. This meat is notably pricier, doubling the cost of regular chicken. Yet, chicken is the cheapest meat. So, based on the cut, expect to spend 35 cents to €1 or $1 more for a serving from a chicken that experienced a tolerable life. Pigs. Pigs are essentially canine counterparts, equally intelligent, sociable, playful, and lovable as pets. Thus, they acutely perceive their living conditions and arguably endure the worst suffering of all consumed animals. Over 90% of pigs likely live in torture facilities, spending their entire lives indoors within extremely cramped areas on bare concrete, lacking straw or bedding. Deprived of essential needs, they become agitated and often aggressive. Piglets' tails are docked to prevent tail biting. Most males are castrated shortly after birth to enhance meat flavor, frequently without any pain relief to save time. Mothers are confined in crates, incredibly restrictive metal contraptions where they can't even turn around. This inflicts extreme distress on both the mother and piglets, who are kept in a sterile area, separated by metal bars, and weaned at only 3 weeks old. Imagine treating dogs this way. First, let's aim for prison-level improvements. Eliminating crates would raise the cost of a $2 serving of pork by approximately 20 cents. Anesthesia for castration is almost free, costing around 1 cent per kilogram of meat. A Danish study indicated that providing pigs with more straw, bedding, 30% more space, and other animal-friendly measures would increase the price per serving by another 20 cents. While still a terrible existence for such an intelligent animal, it's a clear advancement, costing only 40 cents more per serving. Taking it a step further, providing outdoor access for at least 40% of their lives, alongside 300–400% more indoor space, would add 80 cents per serving. Barely 1% of EU pigs live in such conditions. It's uncertain whether this truly suffices for such smart, social creatures, but it approaches something decent, totaling around $1.2 or euros extra per serving of pork. Cow's meat. Cows generally fare better, typically spending about 2/3 of their lives outdoors, leading relatively pleasant lives. If they lived in the wild, their existence would be similar, but less secure. Yet their lives are far from flawless, particularly toward the end. The majority of cows spend their final months in finishing feedlots, either prisons or torture sites, where they're rapidly fattened to achieve slaughter weight. Less than 5% of US beef cattle likely have continuous access to outdoor pastures. However, a recent German study suggests that lifelong outdoor access only raises beef prices by about 15%. Cow welfare varies significantly by country and region, influenced by available land, climate, and traditional farming methods. Therefore, providing simple, affordable strategies for enhancing their lives is challenging. Dairy cows often endure much worse conditions, spending most of the year indoors and suffering from pain, foot ulcers, and lesions from standing on concrete. Yet, these conditions aren't essential for producing affordable milk. In Germany, outdoor grazing increases milk prices by about 10 cents per liter. We could explore numerous other animals and farming practices, but the core message remains. For the animals we most frequently consume, improving their living conditions from outright torture to something tolerable might increase beef and milk costs by roughly 15%, eggs and pork by 50%, and chicken by 100%. The meat of the issue. Meat has become so cheap that we resort to animal torture to maintain incredibly low prices. That's the reality. Developed nations now enjoy the cheapest food in history. In the US, the world's largest meat consumer, individuals spend an average of $337 monthly on food, with $88 allocated to meat, eggs, and dairy. A 50% price increase would raise monthly food expenses by about $43. While seemingly significant, this would merely equate to US consumers spending the same proportion of their income on food as in 1987. In Germany, individuals spend about $70 monthly on meat, eggs, and dairy. Increasing prices by an average of 50% to meaningfully improve animal lives would raise this by about $35, totaling around $100. If this still seems too costly, remember that about 20% of purchased meat ends up discarded. Meat has become so inexpensive that it's often not consumed before spoiling, losing its perceived value. So what actions can you take while shopping? While it may seem that individual consumers lack influence, that's untrue. Markets respond to demand. To avoid purchasing torture meat, examine labels for housing conditions. If absent, assume it's torture meat. If present, it's complicated. Label meanings are often unclear, lacking strict enforcement or legal backing. Some are excellent, others are mere window dressing. We haven't even discussed the priciest option, organic meat. You've likely observed that our price estimates don't always align with supermarket costs. This is partly because some retailers treat ethical products as luxury items, inflating prices. Furthermore, labels like organic, natural, ecological, bio, or the worst, biodynamic, frequently include extraneous or misleading elements unrelated to animal welfare. Many, but not all, incorporate some previously mentioned best practices, but rarely all. Organic labels often include, for lack of a better term, nonsensical measures like prohibiting GMO feed. As discussed in another video, banning GMOs offers no benefits to you or the animals. It merely inflates food costs and creates the illusion of naturalness, while you consume unnatural animal breeds living deeply unnatural lives. Regrettably, labeling standards in numerous countries are deliberately confusing. We often remain uncertain about our purchases. So, reluctantly, if you can afford it and desire a higher likelihood of torture-free meat, seek out labels. If feasible, purchase organic. If time and finances allow, research local farms and acquire meat from places you've personally visited. There's one outstanding exception worth noting: mussels. They absorb carbon and purify water, enhancing coastlines. Calling mussels unintelligent is an overstatement. Lacking a central nervous system, they're likely devoid of thoughts or sensations, essentially akin to moss. Truly, everyone should consume more mussels. Let's conclude. One needn't be vegan to find the existing situation unacceptable. The conditions endured by most animals we consume are appalling and avoidable if we simply paid what our parents did for meat. Progress is occurring, particularly in the West. Consumers can steer the industry positively by accepting slightly higher costs. If unaffordable, consider reducing meat consumption, avoiding waste, and occasionally avoiding the worst offenders like pork. Also, advocate for laws banning the most inhumane practices. Collectively, we can significantly improve the lives of billions of animals. It's genuinely that straightforward.